So lesson 510's homework, we are starting on number 2. So an adult male African elephant is about 11 feet tall and its ears are 5 feet from top to bottom. We have another elephant, a baby, that is 3 foot tall, and we want to find out how big its ears are. So we're assuming that they're proportional. So if one elephant is 11 feet tall and the ears are 5 and another one is 3 feet tall, we can estimate how big the ears should be. So if we're comparing the two, you can start off with the initial ratio of 11 to 5. That's the most common way to do it. So if it's 11 feet tall, the ears are 5. Now I'm labeling it like this because the other side of my proportion has to match this side. So honestly, this side you can set up however you want. You could even compare 11 foot tall to 3 foot tall. And then on the other side, you'd have to match the ears to the correct elephant. And that'll still work out for you. You could have put the ears on top and how tall they are on the bottom, as long as it matches up on the other side. So your initial ratio, you can kind of set up however you want. The other side, when you set up this proportion, this side now has to match this one. So if I put how tall the big elephant is here, then I need to put how tall the small elephant is here. And so that's 3. And we don't know the ears, and that's what we're trying to find. So that would be x. Now I can cross multiply. So 11 times x is 11x. 3 times 5 is 15. We're going to divide by 11. So x equals 15 over 11, which is a perfectly acceptable answer. If you got it to a decimal, it's not a perfect decimal, but it rounds out to approximately 1.36. But I prefer this answer. Okay, number 3. In the next couple of problems, we're going to refer to these two similar triangles. Remember, similar means one's just an enlargement of the other, or one is just a smaller version of the other. It's been shrunk. Corresponding sides are parallel, so you can see that this side corresponds with this, and so on and so forth. They haven't done anything tricky and flipped the triangle any which way. So it says, which side of triangle XYZ corresponds to the given side of ABC. So basically just matching sides. Top matches top, side matches side, bottom matches bottom. So just with the correct terminology here, letter A, we're looking at AC, which is the bottom. Which side corresponds to AC on XYZ? So that would also be the bottom. So that would be XZ. You put a little line over it to show that it's a line. So letter B, what corresponds to BC? BC is this side over here, so that would be YZ. And letter C, AB, right here, line segment AB corresponds with XY. So just to make sure we understand what this line means, it means it's a line segment. It stops at this point and this point. In geometry, when you're dealing with lines and rays and different things like that, a line goes forever in both directions, and so you would put the arrows there, and a ray is going to stop on one side and have an arrow going one way. And this would be a line segment that has definite endpoints, right? These lines don't continue past these angles that are on the corner of the triangle, so that's why we have this straight line over it. It just means that it's a line segment. Number 4, find two ratios that are equal to XY over AB. So I have XY over AB. Let's examine what that is coming from. XY is here, AB is here. So you're comparing the top to the top. And so that's going to be equal to the comparison of any of the corresponding sides. XY and AB are corresponding sides, so we need to match them up with other corresponding sides. So I'm going to do YZ, which is this side, is going to correspond with BC. And then XZ is going to correspond with AC. Now notice, since the first one was set up with XY on top and the AB on the bottom, I have to continue that direction. So moving from here to here, the top, the denominator, is from triangle XYZ, and the bottom is from triangle ABC. So we do need to maintain that order for these to actually be equal and be proportional. Now, the whole point of this is they want you to find the corresponding sides, be able to set up a ratio, and now use that ratio to solve for different missing sides using your cross multiplying in a proportion. So now they're going to give us all the information we need. I'm going to go ahead and just draw this out real quick. This would not necessarily be expected of you in your work, but just so we can reference it. So this is not very good drawing, but good enough. a little better on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and label my drawing since I don't want to write in the book. AB is 12. BC is 5. AC is 13. And XY is 18. So they've only given us one piece of information from here, but we have the corresponding side. So we can set up that ratio equal to, so this is XY over AB, which is 18 over 12. And if we want to find any of these missing sides, we can set 18 over 12 equal to, just like we did here, YZ over BC. So the missing 1 over BC, or the missing 1 over 13, and then cross multiply and just solve for that one missing piece. So letter A, we want to solve for YZ, which is right here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call that X. So I'm going to set up two different ratios that are equal to each other. So I'm going to start with the only one that I have with two actual values. So I can't have more than one missing piece when I set up one of these proportions. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to actually solve and get an answer that's a number. I could solve and I'm going to get some kind of expression with variables in it. But if I want to just know that this equals a number, I can only have one missing piece. So 18 to 12. And since I need this piece, I'm going to go ahead and put it right there compared to 5. So this is actually XY over AB equals YZ over BC. So it's actually this right here translated with actual values in it now. And now we can go ahead and cross multiply and find out what our missing piece is. So we're going to have 12 times X is 12X. And then we have 18 times 5 is 90. And we'll go ahead and divide that by 12. And we get 7.5. So for part B, they want us to find XZ, so I'm going to go ahead and call this Y. Now, when I go to set up my next set of ratios, I'm going to use 18 over 12 again to start it off. And then I'm going to use this XZ over AC, except I'm going to put the values in. So I'm going to pick Y over 13. But instead of using 18 over 12, you could have now, since we know that this is 7.5, you could have used this side. And you could have said 7.5 over 5 equals Y over 13. The only thing you have to have, since we're solving for XZ, is you have to have something here. So we need these corresponding sides. But for the other side of the proportion, you can match these two sides or these two sides, since both of them now have values. If we hadn't done this part A and gotten 7.5, then you are forced to use the 18 over 12. But since we know the values of both of these corresponding sides, we could choose either one. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and solve this one. So I'm going to have 12y equals 18 times 13, which is 234. And I'm going to divide by 12. And that comes out to 19.5. Now, just for the sake of showing you, let's go ahead and try this one and see what happens. So I set this up the same. I just used different corresponding sides. But if they're similar, any of the corresponding sides should set up an equal ratio. So let's see if this works. So I'm going to get 5y and then 13 times 7.5, 97.5. And if I divide that by 5, I also get 19.5. So you can see it doesn't matter which way you do it. As long as you match up your corresponding sides in the right order, in the proportion, you can go ahead and use them to find your missing piece. All right, number 6. We've got quadrilaterals, quad meaning 4, so 4-sided shapes shown below. They say they're similar, so if we don't know they're similar, we can't necessarily set up these ratios that are equal, called proportions, and cross multiply, but they are similar, so we can go ahead and set this up. So part A, they just want us to find x. So I'm going to match up my corresponding sides in equal ratios and cross multiply. So you have two options. You can match up the sides that go together, like 5 over 2.1, and then your other one would be 7 over x. Or you can actually do 5 over 7 equals 2.1 over x and match them up that way. Really doesn't matter. It's the first one that matters compared to the second one. You got to get the second one right so it matches the first. So I'm going to match up the sides that go together because that's what we've been doing. So I'm going to try and be consistent with it. So I'm going to match up 5 over 2.1 since those are corresponding sides. And since these are similar shapes, corresponding sides will need to be in an equal ratio. So since I went from 5 to 2.1, I have to go in the exact same order. If you did 5 over 2.1 and then did x over 7, it's not going to work. So these need to be in the same order. So 5 to 2.1 is the same as 7 to x. We will go ahead and cross multiply. So 2.1 times the 7 is going to be 14.7, and that equals 5 times x. We're going to divide by 5. Okay, and that comes out to 2.94. And part B now, write two possible ratios of similitude. So that's just some fancy words there. So set up any two ratios that are true that makes these similar. So you could set up 5 over 2.1. We already did that. You could also have 7 over, now instead of x, let's go ahead and put the actual number in, 2.94. Now it only asks for 2, so you'd be done there. But you can also set these up in the opposite direction. So you could have done 2.1 over 5, and you could have done 2.94 over 7. So the order that you set these ratios up does not matter until you're setting up an equal proportion, and then they just need to be following the same order. All right, number 8. 3-foot yardstick, 4-foot shadow. So you're going to see these shadow questions a lot. If it helps, draw a little picture. You're going to have the height, and then this is the shadow, and in a way it forms a triangle. So the height of the yardstick is 3, and the shadow on the ground is 4. And then you have a nearby building, which is obviously going to be a lot bigger. It's 56 feet tall. Oops, see, and I already messed up. So we need to be careful. They're not always going to give you things in the same order. So actually the shadow is 56. And it says, what's the height of the building? So a very common mistake that I just made, but I caught it, is you got to be careful. They're not always going to say the height is this, the shadow is this, the height is this, what's this? So you got to be careful and make sure you put things in the right spot. So now that I have the height and the shadow and the height and the shadow, and they want me to go ahead and find it, I'm going to go ahead and set up my equal ratios. So corresponding sides, 3 goes with x, and 4 goes with 56. Now I can cross multiply and solve. So 4x equals 3 times 56, which is 168. Divide that by 4, and we get 42. Number 9. Person is 160 centimeters tall. In a photo, the image of the person is 12 centimeters. What's the ratio of similitude? So again, fancy words, but it's just the ratio between the two. A ratio is comparing two different things here. So we have the height in real life compared to the height in the picture. So 160 over 12. And of course, you would simplify that. Just a reminder, you can do that in the calculator. Bring up your fraction. Punch in 160 over 12. It equals, and it's 40 over 3. Preferably leave it like that, not a big decimal. Okay, 11. Try and squeeze it in over here. So this looks like the one we just did. Okay, these two rectangles are similar. We're going to use a proportion to find the value of x. Now we have multiple missing pieces. So it's just going to look a little different when we set it up, but it's the same process. So match up your corresponding sides. So x over 14. So since I went from here to here, I got to go from here to here. So x plus 6 over 18. So cross multiplying, it's 18 times x, which is 18x. And now when I do 14 times this, it's times all of it, not just the 6. So 14 times all of it, which means I need to distribute. So 14 times x, just 14x. 14 times 6 is 84. So I'm going to go ahead, since I have an x on both sides, I'm going to get rid of the smaller one. So it gives me 4x equals 84. So x equals 21. And then letter B, find the perimeter of the larger rectangle. So perimeter means you're adding up all the sides. So we now have enough information to fill out those sides. So x is 21, which means this side's also 21. And if you plugged it in here for x, 21 plus 6 is 27. So perimeter is going to equal 21 plus 21 plus the other two sides, 27 plus 27. And the final answer there, when you add up all those sides, comes out to 96. Okay, number 12, looking at these shapes. This one gets a little tricky because they've spun this on you. If you notice that the 90 degrees is here, and now the 90 degrees is up here. So when you go to match up your sides, the top actually doesn't match the top. They need to be sitting the exact same way. So you need to imagine this spun. This is actually the bottom, because if you spun this all the way so that the 90 was sitting down in this corner, okay, this would be on the bottom. So it's kind of upside down. And S would be on the other side. So S goes with A, W goes with K, P goes with T, and L goes with R. So you got to be careful. So it says write a true proportion involving S over A. So they matched up S and A, and like we said, those should go together, because when you spin this where the 90 ends up down here, S ends up all the way on the other side. And so S and A go together. Now notice they went S over A. Proportion is just the other side of this. So they went from this shape to this one. So when I set up my next ones that match, you can pick the T and match it with the P, or you can take the W and match it with the K, or the L and match it with the R. That doesn't matter, but you have to go from this to this, from right to left, because they already did it. They went from S to A. So we have to go the same direction. So any of them is fine. I'm going to go ahead and pick W and match it with K. You also could have chosen, instead of that, you could have put the L with the R, or you could have put the T with the P. So you only needed a proportion. So you needed this right here, but instead of this, you could have had either one of those. All right, part B, fill in the blank. K goes with W, so now we're going from left to right. So what goes with T? So K goes with W the same way that something goes with T. So the matching side for T is P. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that P in there. Then it says solve for K. So we need to get K by itself. So we're going to cross multiply here. So K times T is KT. P times W is PW. If we're going ahead and solving for K, that means K needs to be by itself. This is multiplication. I'm going to divide by T to clear it out and get K by itself. So K equals PW over T. (13) Got another one of these shadow questions. Letter A, they want you to draw the diagram. So first thing we know is this guy is 6 feet tall and casts a shadow of 9. If you want to make it a triangle, you can. Nearby building. It's T feet tall, so that's what we don't know. Cast a shadow that's 24 feet long. So there is part A. Letter B, write a proportion, so match up your sides. 6 over T equals 9 over 24. How tall is the building? So now you need to solve it. So part C, cross multiply. 9 times T equals 6 times 24, which is 144. And you're just going to go ahead and divide that by 9. And the answer is 16. All right, on to the review section. Speed things up a little bit. 15, just cross multiplying. So 64 times 9 is 576. 4x times 3 is 12x. Dividing by 12 gets me an answer of 48. 16, a little more involved. Still just cross multiplying. The key here is when you do multiply, you have to distribute. So it's 2 times a minus 3. It's 4 times 1 minus a. So now distribute. That's 2a minus 6. That's 4 minus 4a. 4 times 1, 4 times a. Got a's on both sides. Let's get rid of the smaller one. So I'm going to add 4a. So it's 6a minus 6 equals 4. Add 6. And divide. So a equals 10 over 6, which simplifies to 5 over 3. It also gives you a nice decimal if you want to. Oh, actually, no, that will not give you a nice decimal. So I prefer the fraction in that case. So question number 19. You can see it's from lesson 5.9. So recently, lesson 5.9 was all about setting up proportions. So right along with what we were doing here. 3-ounce serving of beef, there's 26 grams of protein. So you've got that rate right there, that comparison between ounces and protein. How many grams of protein are in an 8-ounce steak? So what we want to do is we want to start with our initial rate, which is 3 ounces is 26 grams of protein. And then what you want to do is you're going to set that equal to the other side. And if you get your labels set up, it's pretty simple. We're going to have 8 ounces and we're trying to find the grams of protein. So you put 8 ounces right here and you put X in your grams of protein. And we're just going to cross multiply. So it's 3 times X and then 8 times 26, which is 208. And we'll just divide that by 3 to get our final answer. And so we get this 69.3 repeated, which we need to know is 69 and 1/3. That's the preferable answer. The textbook says about 69.3. They rounded it, which is fine. But to be more exact, 69 and 1/3. We need to know that 0.3 repeated is 1/3. It's very common, so gotta have that. Okay, number 20. We've got a scale. As soon as I see a scale, I automatically just set up my first rate. So 1.75 inches equals 10 miles. You go ahead and you set that up. And now they're going to give you another distance. So the scale is this, and the distance between Old Faithful and Mammoth Hot Springs on the map. So I've got inches and I've got real miles. So on the other side, I need to set it up the same, inches and miles. And so it says on the map it's 8.5 inches. And now they're asking you what's the actual distance in miles. So that's our X. So all we got to do is cross multiply. So 1.75x equals, anytime you multiply by 10, just slide that decimal over, 85. So we're dividing by 1.75. Okay, not a great number. Now we're talking about miles in real life, so we really don't want to leave this as a fraction. This is not a helpful number. So we're talking about how many miles. So you could say 48. You could round it up 49. 48.5 if you were going to round it. 48.6. Any of those would be accepted. It's not specific on how to round. We're not testing your rounding skills here. We're testing, can you set this up in a proportion and solve? So that's the important part, not how you give your final answer. All right, and the last two questions down here at the bottom, 23 and 24. both coming from this chart. So we're looking at different countries and how many square miles of land area that they have. So not dealing with population, just how big, how much land is actually inside the country's border. So 23. The land area of Russia, which is this 6 million, is this many square miles less than the sum being added together, sum of the areas of China and Brazil. Find the land area of China. So you'll see we've got Brazil, we don't have China. And we're trying to find China. So that's going to be our x. So the land area of Russia, which is this, is this much less than. So I'm going to be minusing this off to get this. The sum of China and Brazil. So I'm taking the sum of, so adding together China, which I don't know, and Brazil. If I add them together, this number is this much less. So I'm going to have to subtract 399,121. And these parentheses now, if you take a look, are not going to be necessary. And so we can combine like terms. These will just drop off. There's nothing to be distributed here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 399,121 off of this number and combine like terms. So I'm still going to have x. I'm still going to have all of this. And I'm going to go ahead and subtract. So we got about a little more than 2.5 million. So minus. And there's your final answer. So just dealing with some really big numbers, mostly testing, can you get this set up correctly? We'll go ahead and squeeze 24 in here at the bottom. Doesn't take too much. So it says the area of Canada is 3.6% larger than the area of the United States. We're going to estimate the area. So we're going to look at the United States. We need to add 3.6% to it. So two options. Find 3.6% first and then add it on. Or just goes directly to the answer. Canada is 103.6% of the United States. It's bigger. It's over 100%. If we found the 3.6% and added it to the United States, we're adding 3.6% to 100%. So that's 103.6%. So that's what I'm going to do. 100. 0.3 is 3%. You add the 6. So 103.6% of the United States. 3717792 should give us Canada. So let's go ahead and pop this in and make sure that it works out. And that is correct. Now it says estimate, which means we can round it off. So I'm just going to leave it just like this. If you wanted to round it up because of the 5 to a 3, that's fine. That's how it's going to be in the book. But again, they didn't tell you exactly how to round. And that's not what we're testing here. The important part is getting it set up. If it's a certain percent more, that's 100 and something percent. If it's a certain percent less, you would subtract the percent off of 100%. So can we set this up? Can we solve? That's what I'm testing. So the rounding is no big deal.